Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
Hey folks, how's it going? I'm Tara Wheeler, CEO of Red Queen Dynamics. With me as always is loyal friend, connoisseur, raconteur, and general man about town, James Byerly, head of Secure Point Solutions. As
Hello.
always, hey Tony, what's up? Yeah, you better pour your tea. That's what's going on. So, and if you have tea, I recommend you put sugar in it. I'm at the WeWork today, which is where one of our offices is, and I tend to use their cups, which is great because I don't have to wash them myself, which is a really strong recommendation and endorsement for me. And as a result, I've got a little extra sugar and caffeine in me. Let's find out what happens. How's it going this week, James?
It's great. How about yourself?
He's like, run away, run away. I'm doing pretty okay. I'm realizing like there's a thing that I think has been weighing on a lot of people, which is sort of the incoming administration might have a lot of changes in store potentially for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is super hard. Yeah, no, I've seriously got that zoomies. That's what's up. But one thing that I just think about when I think about CISA is Jen Easterly and her ability to solve a Rubik's Cube on stage. She gave me this cube, and I hereby pledge to you, James, so long as we're talking about late January, I'm going to learn how to do a Rubik's Cube in honor of Jen Easterly's massive service to this country over the course of the last several years. I feel like I owe it to her to finally learn how to do it. I almost got it. See, the little white thing is in the middle right there,
Yeah.
and I've done the little try pattern right there in the green at the bottom. So I'm following the instructions. I'm going to figure it out. But now I got a fidget toy and caffeine. Bring cybersecurity on.
There you go. That's
Absolutely.
that's not a bad that's that's not a bad fidget toy for a flight or something. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good, especially if you're stuck and you can't look at your phone or something along those lines. I hear you
Exactly.
on that one. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah, so I don't have to wash my own coffee mug, which means an additional injection of caffeine today for me. Information security is as always kind of crazy. I know you got some headlines for us this week, but the big exciting news for Red Queen Dynamics this week, and we'll do a little bit of a demo for you folks later, for customers, for friends, for colleagues, for allies, for people that just hate our guts. We just launched NIST CSF this week, the full CSF for all small businesses, all MSPs. It's pretty awesome. We can show you a little bit later on if you want to, but basically, just go into your dashboard and it's magic. It's there, it's free, and you're already most of the way compliant with it if you've been answering your questions in Red Queen. So I'm pretty excited about that. James, have you heard anything from any of your clients? If you haven't yet, because it's so new, you just lie right now.
Yeah. There's a couple that I'm going to definitely nudge about CSF being out there.
Yeah. Yeah, previously we'd had 7621, which is the special publication, the small business kind of like nipped down version of CSF, which is, I mean, it's the 27 questions where if you do them all, you're fine, right?
Mhm.
But there's not really a need to go deeper into depth for most teeny businesses that are just getting started in their journey. But a lot of the organizations that are out there crosswalk NIST CSF. So the real basics, the fundamentals, we got those covered. Now we got you covered across the board. It's pretty exciting. So glad to hear everybody aboard today. Yes, I've got those Zoomies. Nick, Tony, Diana, how's it going? As always, yeah, ask your questions. But yeah, what do you think is going on in the world of small business today, James? I hear it's not so much small businesses, big gov trying to save us from something a little bit nuts this week.
Yeah. So there's still a continuation of the ongoing saga of telcos being compromised. CISA, FBI, they're now saying essentially go adopt Signal. And that they've been kind of hinting at that for a little while, but I think they've been remiss in doing that because only our government should be able to surveil our people, so there's a little bit of uh, a little bit of that, and we've had a couple customers who had asked, and we've gotten them onto Signal and kind of helping them out. And Signal actually rolled out a new feature that's kind of like almost like a group huddle. I just noticed it today. I hadn't played around with it or anything, but looks like it'll be something helpful, especially now that maybe businesses are getting involved in it. But something that is likely going to affect some some small businesses out there is that the US is considering banning TP-Link products, their routers, due to the cybersecurity risks. So the article came from Wall Street Journal.
Mhm.
They're talking about how 300 US internet service providers now issuing TP-Link devices. And those are potentially compromised or risks of compromised. Talking about botnet being used in spray attacks. And coming from, having spent a decade in the small business space, I can tell you that TP-Link routers are really popular, and especially if they're not working with a MSP or something, they're something that they can run into a big box store and get. It's relatively inexpensive, and they really just they don't know any better now. Any device, any router, anything like that can be compromised. I mean, there's firewall manufacturers that seem like every Friday they're dropping a new 0-day that they have discovered, and it's always a fire drill because it's actually being exploited in the wild. So it's there's also a little bit of the what chips, things like that. Could there be some supply chain related things going on with them? But this will definitely create a little bit of a hassle, especially depending on if they start to require the removal. So if you have a TP-Link, it's probably time to talk to somebody that actually knows about them.
Yeah, I know a lot of government officials have been talking about this over the last several months, and I started hearing some real additional information on this maybe I think 3 or 4 months ago as I was in DC having some policy discussions. I mean, like a cat says here, meow, right? And I remember we had a TP-Link router in our house, handling a bunch of business. It's been a bit. I think we changed away from that maybe a year or two ago, but I remember I remember just making a note, check and make sure there's no more TP-Link routers or infrastructure in our house, or at least that their firmware updated. Um, and a month ago, and I was talking to Deviant, and we both sort of share net admin duties in the house at this point. He's like, "Yeah, we're good to go. We've got it all out of the house." We've got to start paying attention to why this is happening, though. I mean, many of us say that you don't have to be that worried about, iPhone hacks and things like that, because unless somebody's got their hands on your device, you're pretty safe. Well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, TP-Link routers like being able to touch all of your internet traffic in your house, that is the equivalent of hands on a device. That's the reason this is such a potentially devastating vector.
Yeah.
And US government is now telling officials, politicians, important people, don't trust US telecoms infrastructure anymore. That means like don't pick up a phone and a landline and talk to somebody anymore and think someone's not listening in. This is such a change of tune. Can I also say we told you. We told you this would happen. We told you it would happen with Kalia. We told you it would happen with every form of trying to break encryption. We told you it would happen every time you wanted to insert a backdoor in encryption. We told you this with the Clipper chip. We told you this with key escrow. We told you this with every form of weakened encryption. We told you this when RSA happened, the hack for RSA happened, and there turns out to have been a backdoor in RSA encryption for a period of time. We told you this would happen.
Yep.
So I'm just going to stand here in my rightness. Just going to
That's
holding space for how right we were.
right. Oh, absolutely. And I think those of us that have kind of expected this or knew this, we have that feeling, and then there's just so many people that heads have been in the sand, and now we have to play catch up with a lot of them. We have to help to educate to say, hey, what you're doing with a regular phone through regular telco, you need to stop, or you at least need to ask yourself, is this something that I would be worried about getting out, to a foreign power or something like that? So yeah, this is this is definitely some interesting times that we have hit, and I'm really tired of living in these unprecedented times. It seems like every time around, there's a new unprecedentedness to it. Um,
Yeah,
eh,
it's
taking
unprecedented.
Yeah, unprecedented. Yeah, maybe. And so it's funny. I went down a rabbit hole recently, and I found a company that was selling one time pad
Hmm.
creator. And I mean, like I was showing my wife, and she's like, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's basically like a mini Enigma machine," because we had just seen a movie talking about Enigma, and she was like, "Well, that's kind of wild." Um,
Hmm.
so that's it just, yeah, the maybe the old ways are kind of useful. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Man, I love Jones's question on this one, right? Like the old ways are useful, but do enough Americans even care, right? Like that's a great question, Jones. I mean, I feel like saying when Snowden dropped his info, everyone shrugged and said, "Yeah, I figured they were." I mean, like I was in everyone, and I was there in 2013. Now, do not speak to me of the old lore. I was there when it was written, right? And so, like, I'm sitting here remembering like the X key score and the Prism, like, slides popping up with that crazy ass slide. I bet you could still find it if you tried, honestly, James. That
yeah,
slide, and I'm remembering it and thinking to myself, like, I cared, everybody cared, and it was an inspiration for a lot of additional secure behavior on the part of organizations and people that were paying attention. I don't
yeah,
think you're wrong, though. I mean, like, on the Instagram with all of these kids, I see an awful lot of jokes about my FBI agent, right? And I feel like my FBI agent and Elf on the Shelf is not cool. Do not teach your kids that surveillance perpetually is okay, like it's normal or anything like that. I don't care about your holiday traditions, like don't do it. This is the question that I've got. Do people care? Like James, have you talked to people who are like, holy cow, I shouldn't use my phone line anymore?
yeah. I mean, occasionally I'll get questions on that. Somebody will say, "Well, hey, I saw this news headline, and what does this mean to me?" And
Mhm.
it's hard because there's always that piece where
Mhm.
the hey, if you're not doing anything wrong, then what do you have to hide? But and Diana
Yeah.
actually, that um like if anyone wants to see that picture, you need to secure your communications.
Right.
And whether it's the government themselves looking at it, using it could be, you know it could just be a single person. I wish I kind of pulled up the article, but I feel like there was an NSA person that she was maybe accessing phones illegally, or unsanctioned, and
Hmm.
um was looking at like pictures of men or something. Man, it
Yeah.
happened a number of years ago, but yeah, board NSA analyst, I guess, or something along those lines. But
Yeah.
so
But
that
it
abuse of
matters.
power.
Right? It's an abuse of power, and it's an abuse of power no matter who it happens to. And there is no reason that taking like nude pics, which is apparently a thing that is super, super okay for like express yourself how you want on your own private device, right? And nobody should expect that this is something that there should be shaming over something like that happening. We're having this conversation right now because it's so closely related to small businesses who say, I don't make myself a target. I'm not a big deal enough to get hacked, right? Because what we don't want is we don't want this correlation in victim blaming and victim shaming. Like if you didn't want, your nude pics leaked, you shouldn't have taken them to begin with. If you didn't want your business information stolen and your users counterfeited, you shouldn't have been operating on the internet. That's not a choice people really have anymore
Yeah,
in this age, right? Like we have the relationships we have the skills we've got, and we use the internet as a major communications infrastructure, the communication infrastructure to handle this. There's no longer a choice about that.
yeah.
And I'm really disturbed at the idea that shaming people over having information available to themselves and a group that they should be able to specify means that they're at fault if the government looks at their, pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is really disturbing.
It's
Jennifer Lawrence was leaked, I think, in the Sony hack, and that was North Korea engaging in what is very literally an act of war on American soil.
yeah,
And everyone thought it was tee cute. It's not cute, people.
yeah. The person that unlocked a whole bunch of iCloud accounts and things like that. There, um, you know, that's a whole conversation for the revenge porn, the non-consensual viewing of pictures, things like that. That's there's plenty of people that get plenty fired up about it. But talking about businesses, talking about other places, I mean, if you're at a level in a business where it might be worth sliding some money under a table to find a black hat to pop some phones or start reading some mail if possible. I mean, industrial espionage happened. Major League Baseball had somebody hack another team years ago to get information. So it happens. It's just maybe not identified that way. And attribution, as you know, is a real pain in the neck. So in a lot of companies, they aren't that worried about attribution. They just say, okay, block their access and we'll figure out what they took. And that's it. And they don't, and then it just becomes an unknown actor in some report.
Well, for the way this relates to small businesses specifically, and I know I've told this story a couple of times, I'm thinking about the heartbreaking times that people who own small businesses have been targeted in data breaches or with ransomware, and they like this is heartbreaking. It's not even funny anymore. The first thing they do is they call their police department, their local police department, and say, "I've been the victim of a crime. Someone's stolen money from me," and they think they're doing what they're supposed to do, and the police are like, what do you want me to do about it, right? Like call the tip line for the FTC or the FBI, maybe. If you're really lucky, you've got a police department who's cued in enough that they tell you to call your local CISA rep for your state or your region so that you can at least report what's happening and maybe get a little bit of tip on how to prevent it from happening again in future. But the problem we're having here is that the first thing the police will ask you is, do you know who did it? Right? And so when we say attribution is really difficult to do, the problem we have here is that for small businesses, you're never going to get any justice. You don't get justice because your answer is, I don't know, somebody from IP block 129 through 153, right? And the local police department doesn't know how to handle that. And there's nothing in law that lets you get justice or get made whole when you don't know the name of the person that did it to you and they're not in your town and in the jurisdiction. So that's the real challenge I feel like we're experiencing here is, how do you handle, where do you go to report that someone was listening on your phone conversations? Where do you go to report this kind of revenge porn? And it's not revenge porn, it's assault, just like Jennifer Lawrence says. It's not porn, right?
Yeah.
Porn is a thing that consensual people do for appropriate numbers of dollars, goods and services traded, et cetera, right? This is assault and it's wrong.
Yeah.
So
more
copy.
Yes, there's such a it's so difficult because like long before I really got into security, I had somebody buy plane tickets on a credit card and really threw me off. I was like, why am I light by like $950 or something like that? And so I called I went to the police department and I said, okay, I'm only talking to you about it because I think my card might have been skimmed because I went to a restaurant the night before, first time, only time I've ever used it. And then boom, within a few hours, my card's getting used. And so I thought, well, maybe if other people are reporting it. So I call the airline. The airline says, well, all we can tell you is the flight, left LA. It was a one-way, landed in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, so they're not coming here because I'd love to pay them a visit. I'd love to pick them up at the airport. So these two tickets, and now I'm like freaking out. I'm like, did I just help fund organized crime or, or am I funding terrorism? Something absolutely just wild. So I actually, I've worked with some friends and things like that they've gone on after the Navy to some 3-letter agencies. And somebody was like, what flight? And what other information were you able to get? I was able to get seat numbers. So they, So a buddy of mine reached out and said, hey, here's the names of the passengers that were on there. Don't know if they're exactly their names. So did a little OSINT. Looked up where they lived in Atlanta. This happened like late November. So I actually mailed them.
What year is this?
This was 2008 or 2000. No, I'm sorry. 2012.
Nice.
I looked up their addresses based on the names. Sent them Christmas cards. One of them actually had how I found her name was she held a scoring record for girls high school basketball in the state of Georgia. And so I included that in the little letter. And I said, hey, if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's my phone number. I'm happy to have this conversation because you are now flagged by the TSA for like the next 5 years. Nice. And so it was kind of interesting, but people don't have that resource. People don't know where to go. They scramble, they reach out to the MSP, and the MSP is still like, I don't know what to do. And you call your insurance, and then is this something worth risking your rates going up? Just like if you ding your car against something and it was your fault, is it worth the paying the deductible or telling your insurance agent?
I feel like this is the continuing challenge people have, and the reaction we need to be having as a society is not to do less interesting shit, right? Rather than not living our lives and trying to hide from bad people, we've got to start having a little bit more of a conversation about it. And I love the way that Jones put it here, right? Or no, it's this one right here. The question about having nothing to hide and like not living your life so that you got something to hide. I remember Eric Schmidt once said privacy's dead. He used to be the CEO of Google, and privacy's dead. This concept that it's gone completely. I'm going to fight that to my last breath, right? And it's not a question of having something to hide. It's a question of whether or not it's somebody else's damn business how I operate and live my life, right? If I don't choose to engage with that. And I feel like the problem there is that the more and more data breaches we experience, the more we experience the loss of our personal data, the more hopeless and existential we kind of get about it, right? Yeah. And so when I'm thinking right now about the one of the links you brought to me again this week, and it's the Texas Tech breach again, right? This is 14 million patients were impacted by this.
1.4.
Sorry, 1.1.
Yeah, the decimal is hard to see.
The decimal disappears in the URL, which actually that's an interesting conversation. The point in the URL, folks, do you see this in the comments right now? Sorry, this is my offensive security researcher brain going right now on URLs and validation. The dot in that headline disappeared in the URL. What could you do with that? You could change numbers that way. That's fascinating. All right, somebody come up with a way to weaponize that in URL configuration, a malformed URL, like a malformed post or something like that, and tell me like in the comments. That'd be amazing. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm looking at this right here. September cyber attack and Texas Tech with 1.4 million people. What wouldn't you do to keep information like that out of the hands of people that don't need to have it? Right? This is the most intimate information about people. It's comments about their lives, how they're living, where they were, what they got. It is nobody's business what goes on with your personal health. And that is just the continuation of the argument about having nothing to hide. It's not a question of hiding it. It's a question about keeping it from being somebody else's business.
Nobody else's damn business. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And anytime I see medical data breaches, this is the one that I always look at, and I highlighted it. Treatment information, diagnosis. There are diseases, there are things that could be wrong with a person that could be hugely embarrassing. Whether just they don't want even like their loved ones to know about it, or they have an important job and they are getting treatment for something that they shouldn't talk about. You think about like the AIDS crisis. People were getting fired for having HIV. There were people. There's just so many people out there, and some of this stuff could be used against you. If you are seeking treatment for, say, an STI, you could potentially be blackmailed if your significant other isn't in the system being treated as well, or something like that. This is, like you said, the most intimate information in there. Mm-hmm. And, and there's just no, there's nothing, nothing can be done there. And, of course, They're going to get free credit monitoring services.
Ugh.
I really want to know if you can stack your free credit monitoring
That's an interesting
services.
question.
Yeah, like could I just validate a
Mhm.
coupon code and like I have free credit monitoring for the next like 15 years, you know? Like that'd be
17 years.
kind of nice.
I just got back from doing a holiday visit with some older family members. And for everybody here, like throw a hand up if you're on parental IT over the holidays, right? It's the rip and replace on the network. It's the whatever the situation might be. You gotta there's Wi-Fi passwords and there's pulling the television away from the wall to find that the TV has an integrated capacity to get to your Netflix account. There's a Chromecast and there's a Roku box that both can also get to Netflix and they're all wired together. It's a glorious Frankensteinian situation back there. But I remember having a conversation, and over the course of the year, this older family member had stacked up the data breach notifications that they had gotten and said, what do I do about this one? What do I do about this one? What do I do about this one? I've already registered for free credit monitoring. They just keep sending me this letter again and again. It's just different companies that keep saying, sign up for free credit monitoring. We'll cover it for you for 2 years. And she said, should I keep signing up for these? And at this point, I advised her not to. I said, at some point, all you're doing is providing additional information on the fact that you were breached to these services that say they're protecting your credit. And at some point, I'm sitting here thinking like a capitalist, how do you monetize that data? You start to market services to highly vulnerable populations about how to protect their data more. And you're just going to start running a grift that way. I said, the most effective thing that you can do to protect yourself is to freeze your credit at all 3 credit bureaus, and then you've done as much as any of these agencies can ever do for you without giving them your data. Tell me I'm wrong on that one, James.
No,
What do you think?
you're dead on. And I think even going a step further, somebody who is in a that's been breached and now there's some flag in their credit history, I could see companies looking at that and saying, well, that's a bigger risk. So now
exactly.
I get breached and I tell my credit unions, your credit services to help me. And now my score just went down 10 points because now I'm some sort of bigger risk because apparently I had control of experience data, it's ridiculous, but in that world of risk and especially when it talks, money, yeah, people are going to look at all the reasons to maybe say no. So.
I absolutely agree. I think that the real challenge here, and I say I'm thinking like a capitalist. I mean, like we really literally run a cybersecurity product, right? So I don't just think about how we can make our product work. I think about all the ways that our product could be used the wrong way so we can defend about it in advance. But that's because I have offensive brain, right?
Yeah.
So as opposed to an offensive brain, which also is true. The issue I think we keep facing here is that people keep thinking that if they just live a small enough life, that the cyber criminals will pass them by. And we are showing now empirically that you can't live so small that someone won't be willing to try to come after you to take your last penny.
Yeah. It's, there's motive, opportunity, in intent. There's just those elements, and it doesn't matter whether it's somebody getting mugged on the street or somebody getting scammed out of money.
100%. So do you think you want to get to what was the last thing we were going to have a conversation about today? I feel
we were CISA threw some guidance to federal agencies to secure their 365 tenants. And for those of you that are not familiar, CISA actually open sourced a automated configuration assessment tool for Microsoft 365.
I remember
it's called,
that,
called Scuba. It's a really good tool. It doesn't actually make any changes, but it allows you to pull up what issues there are and gives you some guidance on why it may be important to change it. So they're really pushing on this, that they must use Scuba. And I think the big thing is just that, it's trying to standardize the security posture. Otherwise, one agency will say, well, this is good enough. And CISA just kind of wants to say, no, everyone's going to adhere to this. So there's, but yeah, it's I can actually drop the GitHub to it. It's just a tool that you can go out, you can get from CISA's thing.
Dropping it. It's
Yeah.
scuba gear. Let's just drop it right on in here.
Yeah.
This is it right here, folks. So we'll drop that in. There's that. And dropped it into the comments as well here too. There we go. Yeah, gold disc out of the box. Totally.
Yeah. Can you create a gold disc for a 365? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. I wonder how many of us could still recite that 25-digit key from 2004, 2005.
Oh my gosh.
College
I'm thankful that I've brain dumped it, but I can say that yes, for many years, I did not need to look. It's just things that you remember.
You're here.
So this is good. In a number of ways. One, CISA is trying to, lead the way in taking action on securing cloud stuff. They're pushing federal agencies. Obviously, that's also a benefit, but them making this stuff available is really good. There is, if people are asking, there is a Google equivalent. It's kind of beta. They're still working on it, but that's an area that they're trying to help not just their agencies, but again, helping small businesses. You can run this with just a set of 365 creds. It's fairly easy.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just gonna ticket Tilda and Jeff over in infrastructure real quick. Might as well throw it. We use M365 like everybody else on the face of the planet who's not using Google does. Honestly, I'm not seeing it as being worthwhile any longer for small businesses to try to roll their own anything anymore. And so this is all really important to start to develop a sense of what's going on with your cloud, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, this is instructions for MSPs more than it really is for the small businesses themselves. Like again, we don't expect. I got an agreement this morning for an upcoming business partnership that we're gonna have coming up in the next month or so. It's gonna be wonderful news and everything like that. But it's 15 pages, and I am not a lawyer. Again, as I have repeated many times, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I still have to read this entire agreement all the way through and understand it to the absolute best of my capacity and ask intelligent questions about it, because I'm trying to be a responsible small business owner. And you don't have to be the one who deploys scuba gear, but if you're an M365 client and you're a small business and you're not sure what your cloud security posture is, don't call me. Call James. I just have the product. Like, that'd be like calling Quicken for help with your taxes. Call your MSP and ask them about all this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of, what do we do? Do we want to show a little bit about that whole CSF thing going on? All I'm saying is the team is really excited and they're very proud. This has been coming for a long time. Do you want to give a little bit of a look-see?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are customers, users of Red Queen, today the NIST CSF has actually been rolled out. And the really awesome thing, like all the other compliance frameworks that have been created, is that it goes back and it counts your where you stand in relation to this. So here shows that we're 84% compliant NIST CSF. That's great. We do only have 17% of the coverage right now, but we're on the right track. We have, we've done with almost one of every 5, questions or steps, and then looking at things that we can improve. So I actually wanted to pick on this one here, put processes in place, make sure you're fixing software vulnerabilities within 90 days. So I click on the question. I can see that somebody answered they don't know. Okay, totally fine. That's they might not know if they don't notice the patching happening or anything like that. So we can do a couple
opportunity. Yeah.
Yep, educational opportunity, security awareness. If I dare say, you're making people aware of their own company's own organization's security. So this is a nice feature, especially if you start getting a number of people that are saying I don't know, or they're just answering it in a way that you need to correct them. So rather than creating a compensating control, we can actually just say that our software is patched using.
Yep. I'll note something else too. You're returning it to all the people in your organization, but a couple of the folks actually know that already. And there was just one person I think who'd answered it.
Yep.
So you can also just target that to that one person, or you can
Yeah.
return that question to everybody in the org. And then when they see it again, they're like, oh yeah, I remember James told me about this.
And
right?
Anyone that I'm going to guess that anyone that gets this question later, they'll now see this. So they get additional context.
Right.
So yes.
Yep. Super fast to be fixing this. And I mean, like you're doing this in real time, folks. Like this isn't a demo. This is James's organization, like getting better at security at like on a level that is so fast. He's doing it on a live broadcast right now. Like he's going to hit that button. Question's going to pop back out, and 18 seconds at some week in the future, when these folks see this question again, they know what to answer. Like there's not a better way to do that, I'm thinking.
Okay. So return the question.
Go.
Anyone gets it, they're going to be able to now say what your they'll know how to answer that question. So it's not necessarily, telling a person how to answer it. It's educating them. It's getting them to start asking that question. If that question went to the CEO of a company, and if they're like, well, I actually don't know, it's not your job to patch. You're the CEO, but you'd at least maybe like to turn to the person that's doing it and say, hey, are you patching? And can you just show me what that looks like? Do we have a policy? Do we have something in place? Is there, is there some weird compensating control that we have instead of just patching it? Like we have air gap stuff, that's that might be an area where, you have to like not necessarily just answer yes or no, because there's a reason you may have to answer no, which goes above and beyond any checklist you're just going to get from a compliance.
Well, it's the same thing as having those conversations about your taxes or expenses, right, with your accountant, right? You don't have a conversation and do all of your tax stuff and all of your expenses and file everything in a few hours on April 14th every year and then ignore it the rest of the year. It's something that you do continuously. You always have to. And yeah, like I love this one right here. The secretary knows, right? Local Ken's like, this is an example that we give kind of again and again. Is what we do also is discover shadow IT, shadow tech, shadow finance, shadow law inside organizations by asking questions, not like, are you the person assigned to reset passwords in your organization, but are you somebody that people go to get help with their passwords and their accounts? Because what we want to know is, where is this actually happening, right? And there's an opportunity always for additional security and always for a little bit of education. And it's paired with the knowledge that this is never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right? This is about the health of your organization. And like health, you can't make perfect choices all of the time. I ate 4 pieces of that almond toffee on the way into this WeWork this morning. Okay. Like I'm not going to make perfect health choices all the time.
That's all right.
I feel like it was good for everybody around me that I ate that toffee. So sometimes you make those choices and balance them,
Yeah. And I think one thing too is that, when we talk about death by checklist, death by spreadsheets for compliance, is that you get the question that says, do you have MFA? Yes or no? Well, that question asking, does a certain percentage of people have MFA, or is it assuming that everyone should? And you don't realize that somebody just got hired 6 days ago, and because of policy goof ups or whatever, they're not being forced to use MFA. So those kind of things with Red Queen allow everybody to answer the question. And then, so in the case of one of my people said, I don't know if we're patching within 90 days. Cool. We'll educate. Their job isn't to know that. Their job is to hunt our own customers stuff. So that's something that we just sit there and help them with. But yeah, being able to say, not only do we have MFA, but we've you can do a technical verification, you can do an administrative verification. The administrative verification is much, much faster, simpler. You just wait for people to answer questions. And then if you need to show proof, then sure, fire up your screen, show the MFA settings.
Absolutely true. Well, I feel like it's not just the secretary knowing. I feel like we've had so many great comments today and so much great participation today, folks. Like, it's easy to get kind of loud and angry about some of the stuff that's been going on. But I feel like, again, we're all just here to support each other in this kind of basic hygiene in information security. I got asked again this morning. I'll be on a couple of podcasts in January, February. Got asked this morning some of the pre-questions, for some of these upcoming podcasts. And they always want to ask you the question, hey, are you working on anything exciting and new? And I'm like, I am. It's business email compromise. And they're like, what? And I say, like, I'm going to be working on that for 10 years, right? Because what's interesting to me is the fact that we haven't solved this problem at scale for 95% of the United States. That's what's interesting to me, right? Like, that's a great problem for me as somebody who thinks of myself as a social scientist to have. Like, why isn't this done? Why do people not think this way? And so it's always going to be an exciting problem for me, at the same time as it is really meaningful, I think, for a lot of people. And I think those of us that work in the small business MSP community, we feel that in a different way, really.
Yeah, this isn't, I've said it before. This isn't a K1 filing in an SEC. This isn't, the CISO getting canned, but getting a $2 million golden parachute. This is, the business owner now has to make the decision of, can my kids sign up for Little League, or can, my other kids sign up for dance lessons, or something like that. Those are the tough decisions that happen in small business. It even trickles down to businesses like ours, where yes, we're offering a product or we're offering a service, but we still have to make those decisions. And the last thing I want to do is have a business fall victim to something that is preventable, just like fire.
Absolutely.
You can prevent fires. And to borrow, I know we're getting a little long, but to borrow a phrase that Kip Boyle created for his book, fire doesn't innovate. Firefighters have kind of figured out how to stop fires, but fires don't innovate. Criminals do, though.
Criminals absolutely do, right? And, as a responsible homeowner, you're not expected to know how to remediate everything on the face of the planet, but you are expected to know to not let your kid chew on lead paint chips, and you're supposed to not have asbestos, right? Like, you're supposed to know enough to know when to call for some help with some hygiene and some fixes and some repairs over time to the best of your ability to do so. And I feel like there's a great balance in there, right? And the innovation that we're making here, I think, is one in terms of community, not in terms of technology. Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, James, I don't have anything else this week, and I'm going to go bounce off the walls and try to hunt down some more of that almond toffee. So, how are you feeling about this next? I think what the heck is this next week? Oh my gosh. No, do not show up next week on Thursday.
Yeah.
I won't be. I will be semi-comatose, and I will be sleeping off potato.
Yeah. I will definitely be full of eggnog and food and whatnot. So yeah, next week we'll be off. Then we'll be back right after New Year's, rested. And then in a couple weeks, we're going to be doing this live, as in I could actually reach over and high five Tara. So we'll be live on location. But yeah, tune in, and we thank you all for coming. We're excited for what 2025 is going to bring to us. So thanks, and we'll talk soon.
Folks, have a wonderful, wonderful week. It's been a pleasure. Bye for now.